Welcome to the process, and this is a little bit of a different episode. So if you're tuning in, it's obviously Wednesday night, and I'm shooting it actually the day of. So I'm getting this episode out, but this is going to be a little bit of a different one. No angle switches, but just like a straight up one. So as you know, the process is a self-improvement, guest-oriented podcast on biblical principles, but it started to shift and evolved as I've been recording the last few months. It's been an awesome journey. I've learned so much, and I'm just like seeing what the Lord has done and how he spoke to me through my fast to make it based on biblical principles has been awesome. And so kind of if you've listened to the podcast at all, you'll know that I share pretty deep stuff about my life, what I'm doing, my process of sanctification, and just my life, you know? And so the biggest thing with social media I've seen is people don't always share the good and the bad. They just share the good. They share what's the best thing going in their life and kind of give this false perspective of what's going on. And so that is really against what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show the good, the bad, the lessons, and everything that comes with it. And so really for the last couple weeks, I've been struggling a little bit. And so I wanted just to make this episode some cool realizations, and I'm doing much better now in like my mindset and my headspace. But yeah, so some of the things I was struggling with the last couple weeks is that with this new job, I'm trying to figure out a routine, and I've realized that some of the small things have turned into bigger things. Also, as I'm going through this, I'm trying to keep this as most streamlined as I can, so I've got my notes kind of laid out, a couple things I want to talk about. But yeah, so it's trying as much as I can consolidate it and streamline it as possible, but I've noticed these small things have started to turn into big things, and they finally hit that threshold where God kind of grabbed me and said, hey, you're kind of letting things slip a little bit, right? And so I've seen that at the gym. I've lost like my intensity of training and really the passion and the drive that I had for tracking progressive overload and making progress there. My eating has slacked a little bit because, you work these long shifts where you have 20, 25, 30,000 steps, and you'll just eat whatever's there for free. And that's not always the healthiest thing and can have me feeling sluggish that night or the morning after. So my overall health just has like kind of declined, just both like physical, mental, and spiritual, which leads me to, my spiritual disciplines and structure of my life is just not quite where I want it to be. And in that and social media and all these different things, my pursuit of purity isn't quite where I want it to be either. And so that all kind of leads to the overlying theme that my relationship with the Lord has just felt further than it really has. And this walk of my life through Christ in the last 10 to 12 months, right? And it's just a season, and I have so much hope and excited for what's next because of kind of this, the reflections I do. You can probably see the journals, but it takes a lot of self-reflection, and that's what I've been doing lately. And so that all kind of leads me to the takeaways. And so last week I talked with a buddy, and we were just talking about different things, but he ended up sending me a podcast, which I'm going to get into that in a second. But then I was able to, during the time of struggle, I realized that something I'm good at is being vulnerable and opening up about the past, things that I had gone through, but I've already kind of dealt with. I'm not as good for asking help when I'm in the middle of the struggle or, I'm kind of going through it in the moment. So I've realized that, but I was struggling, and Sunday night after my shift at work, I knew Matt, my buddy who was on this podcast, was working as well. So I just gave him a call. I was like, man, I'm struggling. You mind if we talk? I know it's late. And he was like, yeah, of course, man. And so I'm just so blessed that I've built this community of guys that I know every single one of them would have been there for me. I just knew Matt just worked, and he was right there. But everyone would have done that for me. But we went and we talked at Hyde Park for a couple hours, man. And I just got to let it all out, A couple of those takeaways being that I was really relying on my own strength to do everything, to become more like Christ, to do the podcast, I was just white knuckling everything. It was so hard. It felt like it was all me, when just a couple months ago it felt like I was just coasting. And so I got to kind of share that part with him, but I also shared the fact that when I'm in a good spot with my relationship, the external factors don't bother me. And the progress, the process, it's all part of it, right? But I was starting to get just frustrated and felt like I was going almost nowhere, or almost backwards. And so I felt like I was putting in inputs for so long into not just the podcast, but the self-improvement, different ideas, Before that, golf for 4 years. And before that, baseball for, I don't know, since I was 6 years old. And just I had nothing external, I guess, in a sense, to see from it. No outputs, visible outputs. Though on my good days, I know that the outputs are the person I'm becoming, the transformation, the sanctification, and the person I've actually evolved from. Oh my gosh, it's worlds different. And I see that when I'm in that like right now. But I didn't see that when I was so frustrated and trying to do everything on my own. And so me and Matt, we dove into everything, just all of life, and just being able to do that and having someone to listen and reciprocate that as well was just so powerful, as he's kind of walking the same path and trying to pursue the same things as me. So that was amazing. And I just felt so refreshed the next day. And so kind of a scripture that I'm going over tonight with some of the guys is Luke 5:4-7. So I almost never stop in the middle of scriptures, but this was the first time. The day before I was reading Luke, and I stopped at Luke 5:3. And so I picked this up after my conversation with Matt, and it said, "When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, 'Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch.' Simon answered, 'We haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets.' When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink." And man, what a powerful, the coincidence of me picking up that passage after having that, that I never stop in the middle of scriptures, and then after talking to Matt the night before, almost none. But, I see this as the empty nets. They kept throwing their nets, and Simon said, "We haven't caught anything. I've thrown out my nets many times, but I've caught nothing." And so Jesus actually said, "Put the nets out to deep water." So I see that as try again. Listen to me and try again. And so though Simon hadn't seen any of the results or the fish, he listened to Jesus and was able to, throw those nets out again. And because Jesus was with them and with us in our walk, and he listened to him and cast those nets out again and tried again. And trying again in this sense, though it was one time when he casted the nets and came upon the fish, it's more of a metaphor to keep trying in your relationship with Jesus and everything that you feel called, the passions you're pursuing, and so on. And so when this happened, when they threw it out, they caught so many fish, so many outputs or results or, fulfillment in the sense, but that their nets actually began to break, so many fish that they actually began to see their boat sink. But not only that, they had to call their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And so something I want to mark there is they had to call their partners, and that's in a sense community, the people you're doing this with, to help them. So asking for help to walk into the blessings that the Lord has for you. You have to sometimes ask for help from others to walk into the full potential that the Lord and that Jesus can bring to your life. And so that was just a crazy scripture to stumble upon. And then the other takeaways I've had is God pretty much said, "I've given you all the tools, but you're not kind of efficiently or effectively using them in all of your life. Your structure isn't quite there. So I've given you the tools, I've equipped you with them, but you're not using them properly." And last, and we're going to get into this, but pretty much he said, trust in my plan and my timing. And so that leads me to, I was debating a 7-day social media fast. And after talking to a buddy last week, Taven, he sent me a podcast by the Perrys. And so I clicked on that podcast. And though I was debating 7-day social media fast, I clicked the podcast and it just said social media break. That's all I read. And I felt like this flood of thoughts come in, and I don't really think it was me. In a sense, it was more the Spirit leading me. And so this flood of thoughts was pretty much just take this, not just a 7-day break or a fast, but take a full break from social media for a couple months, a few months. And that break's going to be indefinite, so I don't know when it's going to end. It's likely going to be 2 to 3 months, on the longer side, probably 3 months. But the Spirit pretty much said, I have plans for you. Do you not trust that your way, posting twice a week, and your way of hitting 100 episodes is not my way? But do you not trust that my way of taking this break is better and will allow you to walk into the plans I have for your life? And I was just man. it all came so quick. So I like tried to journal it out and like what I was actually thinking and the thoughts that were kind of hitting me and the plan I had in this episode. So this all happened from the time I kind of got in my car in my parking garage before I left the parking garage. So it was just like overflowing of like things. And so the Spirit pretty much just said, like, do you not trust that my plan for you and my steps will not guide you to the plans that I have for you? And I was like, wow. So I prayed over it for a little bit, and I also came up with this 75-day challenge, which I'm going to dive into. This is going to be where I'm on the social media break and to really get in touch with the Lord and my spiritual disciplines in a sense. And so at this point, I'm taking the break for a lot of different reasons, which we're going to hit on later, but my intention of the break, because, I don't want to just check a box and be like, oh, I'm taking a break to take a break. I want to really reap the benefits from this and really grow with my relationship with the Lord. And so I've set out those kind of intentions, which we're going to get into. But yeah, so I was so worried about not missing a week and hitting my 2 episodes a week and getting 100 episodes this year and X, Y, and Z, which was my plan. That was my plan, and in retrospect, it all sounds great. But it really wasn't, I think, what God intended for me. And this was his way of like hitting the brakes and saying, okay, let's get me first. Like my relationship with him is first. And so something I've taken away from this is that my core community is my friends, my family, and the people that are starting to listen. And the foundation of the process is those people as well. And when I was making, 1.5 to 3 hours a week of content, I really can't expect the listeners of the process to listen to any or if all the episodes, because there's so many of them. But if I was to less, like more is more. Everyone will tell you more is more. And you see all these big podcasters or people putting out 3 episodes a week, which is great. But I don't think that's what like the Lord had for me. And because people can only listen to so much, especially when I'm starting this off. And so I've been trying to be like other podcasts like Chris Williamson, like Joe Rogan, which is good to an extent, to have some people you look up to let it like translate. But when you're trying to be like someone, and I started to slowly get away from that as I have the boys episodes, and I really start to walk into, self-improvement on biblical principles, I've started to stray from what everyone else is doing and do what I feel called to and make it my authentic thing, my podcast. And so one of those things is I've started to have my own structure, doing the episodes how I want them, when I want them, and it might slow down to one every 2 weeks or one every month to really up the quality of them, but also give a chance for my like foundation of the process, the people to listen to them, And so that leads me to, my goal is to become the best podcaster possible. How do I do that? It's developing as a person, a speaker, a communicator, listening to my past podcasts. And I have a book right now by Andrew Warner called Stop Asking Questions. The goal with that is just to actually read and implement and journal and implement those things into my podcasting, my speaking, and all those different things. And so that kind of leads me to my other scripture, like during the struggle and during this kind of ups and downs. Obviously, I always have hope in Jesus, and I'm the most fulfilled I've been, but there are struggles, and I want that to be what this episode makes you realize is, man, not everything's great, but that's not bad, man. Like, not being happy all the time isn't a bad thing. It's when you're pursuing meaning. Like, I'm still pursuing meaning on a daily basis on the last 2 weeks, even though I was in, like, not the best spot. I was struggling a little bit, but that's normal, and everyone online very few people share that. But basically, Matthew 7:13 through 14, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And that just shows like the walk with Christ is going to be harder. It's going to put you through more tests, and especially when like the devil sees the potential that you have, he's going to throw more temptations, more negative thoughts, and it's going to be a hard walk. That's what it says. It's a narrow road that few find. Versus the broad and wide road is living in a worldly way, or broad and wide road is living in a worldly way, and it leads to destruction, and many enter through it. It's a very powerful scripture I like a lot, and that kind of just wraps up. And so that leads me to The 75, I'm calling it level up with the Lord. It's a challenge I've created. And so what that entails is, I'm going to flip over, but what that entails is I think 8 different things that I'm going to do on a daily basis. And so these things include 30 minutes of workout. So the body is the temple of God and the spirit lies within it. So we are called to take care of ourselves, to steward the one body the Lord has given us. 15 minutes of stretching. And that personally, like, I have been having like a super tight neck and traps. So that's just to try to alleviate some of that tightness and that pain that I experience. 5 minutes of prayer, 5 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of journaling/abiding, and then reading the word every day, at least 2 chapters, along with Ephesians 6:10-20, which is the armor of God, and Philippians 2:1-4, which is about being selfless every day. Following a 90-10 animal-based diet. The only exceptions is there's going to be 1 cheat meal a week, just to enjoy, that balance of life and not like be absolutely strict. And then on the boys' nights, enjoy the tacos that I cook. And then full purity, and then daily progress picture and weight, and 100 ounces of water a day. And those are just small disciplines, the spiritual disciplines, along with personal disciplines to just feel the best, steward the body, steward the mind, and steward just all the different things. And so I think it's 8 of them, but that's for the next, starting tomorrow is what I'll be doing along with the social media break. And so that leads me to the last thing. So the intention of the social media break. What are the things I'm looking to get out of it? What are like the intentions of going into it? I'm not just like saying, hey, I'm doing a break to do a break, but what can we expect and like those things. So first and foremost, it's to grow closer in my relationship with the Lord. That's the first thing. I want to get more structured and better in my spiritual disciplines. So that's what that challenge is going to be doing. I'm going to be doing it with at least a buddy, maybe a few more. And so another thing, as I have this podcast on biblical principles, I've actually never read the Bible front to back, though I have dove deep into different, chapters, different gospels, I've read most of the Old Testament, but not as much of the New. One goal is to read the word front to back as I'm and gain knowledge in the word. Though we always learn, I feel like as my podcast is a self-improvement on biblical principles, I want to read it front to back in the physical Bible fully. And so I'm going to complete that. Right now I'm in Job 21 and I'm in Luke, 9. And I'm reading the Old Testament and the New Testament concurrently to finish the full physical Bible. So I'm going to finish that in this time period. I also want to gain a greater sense of peace and limit the noise in my life on this social media break. And so something I've noticed is that social media and the always constant checking notifications and making sure I post has, magnified the anxiety I feel in my life and maybe the OCD as well. So I want to learn how to just calm everything and find a greater sense of peace before I return back to social media. And really just in this day and age, I think I'm extremely self-aware. That's something I've realized. And just everyone needs to be constantly stimulated or getting dopamine from short form things. So I'm not just like deleting Instagram. It's like I'm deleting everything. So Instagram, YouTube Studio, Spotify, music. Like I won't be listening to music. I'm just trying to live in the present. That might seem a little extreme, but it's like I hop in the shower, I throw on a song. I hop in the car, I throw on a song. And it's like no one can just sit there. So I'm trying to just eliminate all noise and really hear that still small voice of the Lord in my daily walk with him. So, and another way I'm going to be doing this is leaving my phone behind. I'm going to make a effort to, when I'm going to church, leave my phone at the house. When I'm going to work, leave my phone at the house. So the first thing I'm not doing is looking at, did someone text me? Probably not. But looking at that, and so that's another one of my intentions. And so another intention of this social media break includes to not be led to temptation. So on my pursuit of purity, Instagram, YouTube, all these different things, man. A lot of people just like the stuff posted on there isn't always the best. So in my walk in purity, I felt social media, just I don't need to be on it for this time. It can lead into temptation. So I'm on this pursuit with the Lord, on the pursuit of purity. I figured this is also another reason, is to just another intention. So another intention is to take time to only create. So a lot of people that create content are always like scrolling. Hey, I'm learning what I need to post. I'm learning the things I want to post. I'm getting ideas. I'm creating. But it's like you're not actually creating. And a lot of times you're just implementing someone else's ideas or creation into your own. And it's not as much creation as it is just copying. And so sometimes I think it is to get good at ideas. But I've seen so much. I really want to take I've set out some time frames, but the first 30 days, I'm just going to ideate. So journaling, giving ideas of short form content and podcast and long form content. And then the next 60 or however, it's probably going to be closer to a 3-month break, but I'm going to be actually creating possibly podcasts, but more likely like the emphasis is going to be short form content in the future to lead people to the podcast. Versus, the podcast wasn't going to bring as many people to the podcast, but the short form will be the form that brings people to the podcast. So the goal is going to be there. That's going to be my main focus, and I'll be creating that kind of content as well as some long form and some podcasts as well. And then last couple things is improve as a podcaster and a question asker. So I'm going to go back through, and the only content I'll be really consuming is going back and watching my past 22 episodes, seeing, hey, what words I've noticed I say yeah a lot. I like to agree or notice, like that's my way of like hearing out what the viewer says. But you don't always need a yeah to acknowledge what they're saying. You can just start your next question or sentence. I've learned a couple of those small things along with ways to better go about these. I've read Stop Asking Questions. So that's that book I was talking about. And I'm going to really dive in and start to implement that into every guest, like how I can better ask questions, how I can set up better for the podcast, and all these different things. And last, as a podcaster, where the process is going, I'm going to be doing a full rebrand of the podcast. I'm going to be continuing to create, analyze, evolving, and all those different things, and really focus on the internal motivations of the podcast, and through my relationship with God, not focus on the external at all. That's the goal. And the last thing really I noticed is get back to doing the things I love and enjoy. I got so wrapped up with work and with the podcast and forcing out episodes, and when I have time, just doing small, like I wasn't doing the things that I love and enjoy, like going to run clubs, going to jiu-jitsu, I just cut out a lot of these things that had really poured into me, and I was just pouring out constantly to where I was empty, and I was just relying on my own strength, and there wasn't much left, man. I was just tired. I'd grown weary. So Galatians 6:9 says, "Do not grow weary in doing good, but you will reap a proper harvest as long as you do not give up." But man, I'd grown weary because I was relying on myself. And so I'm just going to start doing the things that pour into me. Sometimes you can be involved in so many groups at church, but sometimes what pours into you is that quiet time with the Lord or that run club that you really enjoy. And so sometimes it's better to spend that private time with the Lord than it is to join, a 7th group at church. So I'm really just trying to find that structure, find what pours into me, and get that nice little pour in, pour out ratio, that 1-to-1. And yeah, so I think that really covers the last couple weeks, the takeaways, the lessons, the struggles, and last of all, the intention of this social media break. And man, I am extremely excited for this break. I wanted to say this at the beginning, but for anyone and everyone who has liked, followed, commented along the way, is watching the journey of what I'm doing and supporting me in any way, support in any way just means the world to me. I really, I can't respond to every comment. That's something I try not to get all worked up about, but I do because I want people to realize how much I really am appreciative of when they comment, subscribe, follow, shoot me a text, anything like that, man. I appreciate it so much, but I only have so much time and I can make so many connections. And so I try to live up to this, reach out to every person, respond to every comment, and it's just me. And so sometimes I'm trying to like figure that out on this break as well. How do I do that in a way that I can acknowledge and respond to people, but it doesn't take attacks on me, and I don't feel like I'm not responding to people, because I make sure I pretty much try to make sure I respond to every single comment, and that just gets, it just gets a lot, man. And so I got to find that balance. That's going to be something I'm going to be doing in this time as well. But seriously, that led me off topic, but I'm so appreciative and grateful for anyone that has supported in any way. And man, my family, my friends, the boys, the guys from school that support me still. It means so much, man. And I'm so excited because I felt like this weight was lifted off me after getting to talk to Matt, and just became so clear on the things that I need to do, the things I need to walk into. The things that the Spirit is really kind of like leading me to. So I'm just fully trusting in God's timing and God's plan, and that this break is going to just reap so much fruit, like the fruit of peace, man. The fruit of the Spirit includes peace, and that's one that I really feel like I've lacked just for a long time, man. When you have anxiety, when you deal with OCD, peace is something that there's few and far between for me. So I'm trying to reach a new level of it. That fruit of the Spirit is the one I'll be focusing on. But, man, really excited for what is next. So that's it, man. I hope I can consolidate that as much as possible and streamline it that it made sense. But, yeah, so starting tomorrow, Thursday, I'll be off all social media, everything. I'm cutting out music. I'm cutting out YouTube. I'm cutting out every single social media. Full social media break, dopamine detox. And the goal, obviously, number one, is just to grow in my relationship with the Lord, to put in place those spiritual disciplines, to continue to grow with Him, to continue to find those things and do the things I love, to continue to foster the relationships that He has brought and blessed my life with, and to build that structure around Him and just around my schedule to where I can just maximize. I don't want an easier life. I don't want that. But what I want is the stronger legs, or like the Lord's strength, more of it, to learn how to deal with these things better, have a stronger mindset, to have a stronger frame to continue on and to keep pursuing and persevering through any challenges. So yeah, tomorrow social media break is starting. Like I said, thank you to anyone who's supporting. When I come back, it's indefinite. I don't know when it will be. But I'm just so excited to see what the Lord has planned. Full rebrand. It's going to be new, but this is the end of season 1 of the process. Season 2's coming, and I can't wait to just walk into what is next. I am so excited for this break. Cannot wait to see what comes from it and the fruit that's going to be reaped from it. And then what's to come when I come back, man. Just fully trusting in the Lord, His timing, and really focusing on that relationship with Him, making Him number one, and structuring my life in a way that, man, I can come on here and just share the story, share what that break looked like. I'm going to try to be documenting it, and then just really taking some time for myself to pour back into me. So I might have rambled on a little bit there at the end, but yeah. That's it. That's episode 23 of The Process, and we'll catch you in a few months likely. So thanks for tuning in. Always thank you for the support. That's The Process. Peace.